Let us continue with the great show, as always. Christy McSweeney is here in a conversation with none other than Stephen Conroy. They're both here to help. And if you pay real close attention, squint, they're in Melbourne. Hello, lovelies. Lovely to see you. So today we had the Victorian Premier doing the lefty mind trick. There is nothing to see here. There is no problem. Melbourne is safe wherever you happen to go, morning, noon or night. And the federal opposition leader is playing the state opposition leader by talking about crime in Victoria today. Here's some of the back and forth.
Melbourne has gone from the most livable city to the crime capital of Australia.
That's just purely politics, right? We all remember when the previous leader of the opposition, when he was a minister, he came to town making some of the most outrageous claims about Melbourne and safety issues in Melbourne. So we're seeing from the current leader of the opposition that she's following this same anti-Victorian pattern of behaviour.
All right, let me put it this way to you, Stephen. We know crime matters, but does it matter electorally in Victoria? Because I remember before the last election there was a spike. We know it's got worse in the past 4 years, but the triangle of dependence, good luck breaking that anytime soon.
Well, look, I think the problem for Susan Lee is there's plenty of federal issues that she should be talking about. And I think her buying into, clearly a state government issue, it makes her look a bit silly. What it does, though, it exposes just how bad the Victorian Liberals are at taking up and holding, a government to account at all. And as we always say, you get your best government with your best opposition. And when you've got an opposition that is so bad, then some of the issues that should be dealt with quicker, faster, stronger tend to not be dealt with in that way. I mean, the issues around crime in Victoria, clearly the police commissioner has come out and said, the new police commissioner has come out and said, my job is to get more cops on the beat, my job is to reorganise, and so that we can deal with more uniforms on the street. I mean, that's the Victorian Police Commissioner just appointed by the Victorian government. So I think there is an acknowledgement by the government in a subtle way that this is an issue that they need to be firmer and tougher in. They've made bail law changes, they're changing the laws around machetes. People might say they've done it too slow, but they're starting to move to cauterise that issue politically, especially with the announcement by the Victorian Police Commissioner. But Susan Lee jumping in, and Jacinta is right to point to, Peter Dutton made outrageous statements. He said it wasn't safe to go to a restaurant.
Yeah, but we're still really talking about the African gang stuff from 5-6 years ago. I mean, look, I get it, right? And the reality is, when anyone comes into town who is not of the town, then we get the whole carry-on. We'll get to Mark McGowan in a moment or two's time. But, Christy, central question, right? Central question. It's a disgrace what's happening. It's a disgrace what's happening when O is down to pens and paper and corruption commissions are saying we need more power, but an opinion poll comes out and tells us they're on their way back. How the heck does it keep happening?
Well, Stephen's right to say you get your best government when you get your best opposition. And if that's his rationale for the state of the governments that we've got federally and in Victoria, perhaps he's right, because we're scraping the mud with the government and the opposition is not much further down the puddle. But I will say, look, crime in Victoria, yes, it is an issue. I've seen some polling from Redbridge, who did the polling for the Fin Review, saying that it wasn't in it's a top 5 issue, but it wasn't compared to cost of living. I think it is if you narrow it to Melbourne. Certainly if you narrow it to the suburbs that are competitive for the Victorian election. The Coalition is polling ahead of Labor, but of course Labor has a 13% Green vote on their side. Not to mention here in Victoria we have a number of minor parties like Animal Justice and the Socialist Alliance that garner quite a bit of percentage of the vote, that preference to the left as well. So yes, the Coalition is right to talk about crime. It is an issue in those seats that are competitive, but don't be too excited about the poll results, because you can't lift you really need to work hard to lift your vote, that 13 to 16%, to counteract the Greens and those minor party preferences that put you ahead of Labor. You don't have that preference partner on a left or a right flank. So don't get too excited with chatting about crime. Liberal Party in Victoria, there's a lot of other things to talk about. I agree completely, but it is extraordinary, right? That
anyone who's aware of how Australian politics has worked for a long period of time, right? Labor, Liberal, whatever, right? The concept of I don't feel safe normally results in some sort of a change politically. The idea that, oh, look, I don't like it, but I'll live with it because the other one's not woke enough. That sort of speaks to perhaps bigger and deeper issues that are going on. But again, hey, free vote, see what happens. All right. Now, I want to talk about the peace deal of the past couple of days, right? And while I understand that some people have heard an awful lot about all of this over the past couple of days, there is a different version of the question that I want to ask, right? Which is, Stephen, is peace going to hold, right? Now, we don't know. Nobody knows, right? But my feeling is that, look, the celebrations of the hostages coming home all make sense. The signing of the peace deal, really important, right? Because theoretically, sort of every country that rings the area, with the exception of Iran, not an insignificant one, but still, have all committed to peace, committed to the rebuilding of all of this, really important, right? But we're seeing two things that are happening now. Surprise, surprise, Hamas didn't do what they promised to do, which was to return every single hostage, living or dead. Didn't happen. And secondly, we're now seeing a scenario where Hamas is brutally trying to get control back of the streets or whatever minor dissidents there would be. And then, of course, there's the other issues here, which is about the de-arming of Hamas. Well, that obviously happens by force, and who is the one who's behind it? So in a week from now, are we still talking about peace, Stephen, or are we getting close to some fracture where the only thing that really changed is people being crossed over the border?
Look, I struggle to say this given my views on Donald Trump, but he does deserve congratulations of where he's got the process to. It is an achievement. It is a force of his will that got it to where it is. So stage one implemented. The whole world wants the whole plan, stage 2, 3 onwards, to succeed. But you can see that Hamas have got no intention of being part of stage 2 onwards. They only exist to prosecute against the state of Israel. They will kill any amount of Palestinians. I mean, I look forward to those next Australian rallies, walking up the streets of Australia, going, free Palestine from Hamas.
Correct.
Free Palestine from Hamas.
Correct.
Because if they're turning up now to protest, then they are revealing themselves to be fundamentally anti-Semitic. They don't really care about the Palestinian people. 100%. They just want the destruction of the state of Israel. So I hope Donald Trump's plans work. Words I never thought I'd say in my life, but I'm barracking for it. But like all of us, we're watching these atrocities being committed in the streets. And to those protesters, every reasonable Arab nation is behind this peace plan. There is no support for Hamas, no support for what Hamas are doing. But someone's got to put boots on the ground to enforce the peace, which means they will end up being in combat with the Hamas fanatics. And that is a different step from, Israel doing it is one thing, and they've obviously done it successfully. But we need to see all those moderate Arab states, plus others who are willing to enforce the peace deal on the streets in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip.
Now, just before I go, I did mention Mark McGowan, so I'm going to get to him now, which is, okay, he was at some sort of event, rah-rah, ha-ha. He's sitting there with Julie Bishop, perfect example of balance of left and right, but anyway. Now, let's talk here, which is that she said, what's the highlight of your career? She says, being the president of the UN Security Council. Okay, being overruled by Russia, France, China. Anyway, he says that he got the trifecta. And his highlight was that he kept Eddie Maguire out of Western Australia, and he wanted to make it perfect. He wanted to make it permanent. He also was able to keep David Koch out and the former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. Now, this wanker, obviously, great, goes down well in the room and everyone has a little bit of a giggle, and I understand the grand cultural difference between the East and the West. But, of course, more than happy for the East Coast states to be sending their GST. But that can cross a border, but these three people can't. As a proud Western Australian, Christy, you can say what I'm not allowed to say, because apparently anyone not born in Western Australia is not allowed to offer any criticism of the Emperor.
Paul, did you just open up an argument about the GST with someone from Western Australia as their birthright on national television?
Yeah, well, all I know is that when a former Labor staffer offered the current Prime Minister at a press conference to write it on his arm, I get it, I know it, but I'm just saying, we're more than happy for... GST money can move around nationally in lots of different directions, but no people can cross the border during Wu flu. Oh, yeah, people died as a result of this. What a hilarious joke. The young man who killed himself because he couldn't get home. What a wonderful wanker this man is.
All of that.
Please.
All of that. And in all seriousness, I did have friends return from overseas to Western Australia to see their dying parents and still locked in hotel quarantine, and there were no exceptions. And I myself did hotel quarantine and had to show a mock customs that was set up at Perth Airport, my passport, and which had Western Australia as my birthplace on it, and tell people why I wanted to enter the state. It was incredibly dystopian, the levels that it was embedded into Western Australia.
But it just, look, I get it.
What's not mentioned here...
But it's the crack.
You said he was at... Absolutely. You said he was at some event. That event was a property council event. Now, property donations are banned everywhere else in Australia, not in Western Australia. That's because the Labor government under Mark McGowan, and to this day still under the Cook government, won't ban them. And in fact, McGowan has gone and got himself on the board of several property companies and fronts up to the property council event. That also is a bit of an in-joke in Western Australia to go with the COVID gag.
Yeah, well, again, forgive me being able to offer an opinion on an entire country, but alas, last time I checked, we are still one. Thank you, guys. Do appreciate it. We'll see you again very soon.